Everyone. Welcome to session 2 of Free Private Cities. Yesterday we had Peter. Today we have Titus Gebel, the creator of Free Private Cities. I have watched his videos about the whole journey about this, a lot of stuff about his book, and can't wait to host you because this is a whole new revolution you are working on, and there's so many interesting concepts which I'm curious to learn today. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Mayur. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, Titus, can you take us back? When was the seed of this idea born? Like, what was going on in your mind, and what was the challenges at that time?
Yeah, it was about, I think, 10 years ago when I first started thinking about, after being somehow 30 years involved with politics, trying to convince people that more liberty is a good thing, not a bad thing, that they are self responsible, right? That you cannot just blame somebody else for your mistakes, and that the free market environment is creating the best wealth for everyone, especially the poor. And I tried to convince people for 30 years about that things in a more conventional way, being member of a classical liberal party in Germany, and then being an entrepreneur, having contacts to the government, and being part of the establishment of that of Germany, right? And what I found out after 30 years of political activism is that there's no demand for such values. It might sound a little bit strange, but there's no majority demand for liberty and self-responsibility. The guys who are promising that you're entitled for free income, free lunch, whatever, they always will be elected because it's so much easier, right? And I think, okay, somehow that's natural, right? I mean, even you and I, if we were offered, hey, you're getting $100, but you have to work 10 hours hard work, or you just get $100 and make just your cross here on that document, we probably would go the easier way, right? So it's a human behavior. And so I thought, okay, this is not ending well. So what can we do about it? So I thought I had to really totally come up with a new product, right? And I said, forget about politics. Let's just think, okay, if this is true, what we are saying, that the free market system is superior because it's voluntary, because it's decentralized, because it's a trial and error system, why do we not apply this system on our living together, what I call the market of living together, right? Well, in the market of living together, liberty related ideas are not in demand. But it's not true that they're totally not in demand. They are only a niche product. But I am convinced that at the end, this is the best product for all, at least for a large number of people. But I cannot convince people because I'm competing against people who are saying, no, you are entitled for free healthcare, free living, you're entitled to have a job, education, everything. You have the right to live on the expense of others. I cannot compete with that. They will always win elections. Okay? So here's my idea. I create something which is 100% voluntary. Only people who like that system go there. And then after a while, people can compare. And they will find out, that's at least my thesis, that, hey, they don't have a social welfare state. And nevertheless, the poor are better off in their system. The people in general have more freedoms. There's more innovation. There's more caring for each other because you cannot say, hey, it's not my problem. The social welfare state will take care. No, you have to take care of your neighbors or of your family, or of your friends. So these are the things that my thesis will be much better in such a system. And I thought, how can we make it happen? And I was very successful back in the days with starting a mining and oil and gas company. So not Bitcoin mining, real hard rock mining. If I said it today, I founded a mining company. People understand something else than what they did 15 years ago, right? Mining resources, metals, and later oil and gas. What was then founded in 2006. We went public in Frankfurt in 2010, had gold mines and other things in Australia, and later oil and gas in the US. Became very, very successful. And I could leave at the end of 2014, the company. I was a CEO. And I left after 8 years, say, okay, that's enough. And I moved with my family to Monaco. And what I found out in Monaco is after a year or so, hey, I have zero interest in becoming involved in Monaco politics. And I asked myself, why is this? I was always interested in politics. And I said, actually, what I want to be left alone. I want to do my business all over the world. And I need independent civilized dispute resolution, protection, security, some infrastructure, and I'm willing to pay for that. And I thought, okay, if this is all, right? If this is all, protection of life, liberty, and property, dispute resolution, well, you don't need a prince or a government for that. A private company can do, right? I mean, that's not a big deal. And then I went into that thinking of, hey, all these free market proponents, I never came to the idea that living together is also something that a free market could address. So I could just say, hey, let's create something where I say, as an operating company, I protect your life, liberty, and property. You pay a certain fixed amount for that per year, and your rights and obligations are laid down in a real contract, in a real social contract. It's a real service contract, right? A private government service contract. And if we have a problem, we get to independent outside arbitration, right? So not my courts, outside third-party courts. That's all, right? And I did 3 years of research and a lot of calculations. My guess at the moment, Major, is that costs you not more than 1,500 euro per year, right?
Whoa.
Okay, so you have a lot of money still left because you have to take care of healthcare, education of your children, and things like that. But there will be offers, and we are already trying to get some providers to come. And so I would say at the end, it's much more, you have much more money left for yourself and your purposes that you consider more important than other people. Because here's the thing, we are all interested in a living peaceful life. That means not being victims of crime. Even a robber doesn't want to be robbed, right? So, and you don't want to get out of your apartment and being killed or injured. So nobody wants that. We have 100% agreement on that, right? Mm-hmm. The moment you go beyond that, there's never 100% agreement. Why? Because people are different. And so I say, it's not different from what the classical liberal philosophers of the 19th or 18th centuries have said. It's that, well, the only justification for a state is the protection of life, liberty, and property, because everything else, people are different. They have different preferences. And the problem is, if you are introducing a normal state system, then, especially if it's a democracy, but that is true for all systems, the guys who promise more, they are more popular. Right? At the end, the state is bankrupt, right? And then it starts anew. So how can we escape out of that circle? So you can only escape if you go this way. There's a real contract, and it's basically a service contract. And I cannot change the rules, and you cannot change either, and the majority cannot change either too. So you are really protected because it's a bilateral contract, a citizen's contract, right? And this is very, very important. Of course, I could say I'm the operator, I'm providing security. So if you go to an outside arbitration and they say, hey, Titus, you made a mistake, you have to pay back Major some of the money, or you don't have to do this or that. And I say, well, I ignore that, right? I could do that, right? But it's a little bit like a captain on a cruise ship. He also has absolute power. He could flog you, right? Because you were not well dressed enough at the captain's dinner. But he's not doing that out of commercial interest. And it's the same with me, right? If I disregard the very arbitration decisions that I say in the contract, we go to arbitration. And then I disregard what they say, um, people will eventually leave. No new customers will come, and I will go out of business and lose my reputation. And that's why I'm not going to do that. And that's how the world works in other areas. And I don't see a reason why this should be different here. So you are ideally protected. And I mean, it's not a perfect world, but you're better protected than by a constitution, which is normally changed by other people, that is interpreted by other people, and you might not even have legal standing to go to court because you are not a party or not a no local government or whatever. In our case, it's just me as the state operator and you as a private person. If you think I'm not performing well, you can sue me anytime. Okay, so it's much better protected. And the other good thing is that with other contracts, I can't just come say, by the way, we have changed the rules and you have to pay 500 euro more a year. But in exchange, you're getting something, whatever, a new swimming pool. And you say, sorry, Titus, I have not agreed to that. It's not in my contract. And you cannot just change it. And that's a very, very big advantage, because people are talking about it's a social contract between the governed and the people in government. Well, why is it then changed every year only by one side, never by us? It's not true, right? It's not a contract. Contract is two sides agree on something. And that is the big difference. And so this is basically the idea in a nutshell. It's called a free private city. And of course, the difficulty is because I cannot force people to sign a contract. So I have to attract people to a territory which is formerly uninhabited. So we have to go to a state, because all of the land in the world is already distributed. Go to a state government, say, we want to establish something like that. And here's how it could work. We could say, okay, it's a kind of a special economic zone. They know already that concept, right? But it's a little bit more. It's a special administrative zone, like Hong Kong, Macau, because we want to have own administration, own police, own courts, right? And they say, ooh, that's a lot. But I say, yeah, but we bring a lot of investment and jobs that otherwise wouldn't come. And that's how it works in the real world. But I can tell you, this is not easy, right? Normally, you can say at least 3 years negotiations, because before you can even start, and then you will not get everything you need. But we are in the very beginning of a very revolutionary, I would say, new idea of living together based on voluntariness and the real enforceable contracts, enforceable for both sides. And it is clear that this is not an easy task. And I can only say you have to start somewhere. And the first projects are not real free private cities. They're kind of hybrid models. But that's what we are working on. And I think this is what I will be working on until the end of my life. And I hope that people like you then take it up from there, come up with their own ideas, make variations, and then we start something as a grassroots movement from bottom up. We're creating new societies, and we will make mistakes, right? And we will learn from each other much better than what we are learning today, right? It took 70 years for the Soviet Union to collapse. Everybody could say after 10 years, it's not going to work, right? Or Venezuela, you can say it's not going to work, but it's still there. People are suffering, right? So there's no learning curve, no real learning curve. I think if you have thousands of free private city types of societies, there will be a steep learning curve.
Interesting. There's so much to absorb in your response, and I'm amazed by the whole massive challenging idea you have taken. I'm curious, so I'm comparing this with a startup world where sometimes you have futuristic ideas, but if it's not at the right time, some years later, same idea gets a massive adoption. So, what stage are you think? I remember Peter mentioned about there are few countries or cities where this is being adopted. Are we in the early adoption curve, and when do you see this scaling up large, this decade, next decade?
Yeah, very good question. I think we can go back to the 60s when first, I mean, we can probably go back in society to ancient times when people just try to form separate societies. But I think in the new world, in the 60s, were first some libertarian projects that wanted to create on the high seas, right? or new territories, artificial islands, things like that. And for several reasons, they all failed, right? And then, but there were attempts there, and then you had other attempts to create to secede from your country, to have ideas like, well, there's a terra nullius, there's an unclaimed territory, we can do something there. And but eventually, this in the 80s, with another wave of those things, but eventually it all failed. And but it was only singular projects, right? It was maybe one project in 5 years, or one or two in a decade. What we are seeing now is a multitude of attempts, right? And I would say 70% of the attempts who wanted to create new community societies do not understand that they need legal autonomy. So that, I would say, that's an intentional community. You live together with like-minded people, that's fine, but it's not really helping, and you will recognize that, right? Because then the moment you're successful, government comes say, hey, by the way, you need a permit for this and that and that, and we are putting up some claims against your people, and so you're not protected. You know, you can really, you're subject to the government's will. So and so far, if you want to create a new society or new community or an alternative, be careful about that, because they are normally 99% fail of those intentional communities, right, after one generation. So we are now in a phase where a lot of people, I would say several hundreds in the world, I consider, or would tell this, call this like this startup society movement. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you had the charter city idea of Paul Roma in 2009, I think, where he was coming up with another country should run this so it's better managed. And then I developed that further and said that countries do not accept a foreign flag, right, or foreign rules. But as a private company, we are more or less harmless, right, with collecting best practices from all over the world and employees from all over the world. So it's a real international business. And it was only in 2013 that the very first law was passed that made this possible. And this was in the country of Honduras. Why? Because in Honduras, that was before the free private cities idea was even formulated. But in Honduras, the people, some jurists in the government, they said we have to do something. Our country is in the hands of a drug lords. Basically, all institutions are corrupt, and reform is not possible. So how can we get out of that? And they came to the idea, hey, let's create a Hong Kong type of development, right? We try to establish a Hong Kong based on common law in the Caribbean within our country. And they said that's not easy, and they made a law, and then the Supreme Court was challenged and said, "Hey, this is against sovereignty," and then they pulled it back and said it's unconstitutional. But they didn't give up. These people really, three people in three Honduran jurists, they came up. Okay, let's make a new law which takes into account the sovereignty issues that the Supreme Court brought up, and this is the Sadie Law, which came into existence in 2013. There is also a lucky coincidence because the Socialist Party boycotted the election, so they had a two-thirds majority and could pass that law, and could even change the constitution. And they said, okay, we allow in the whole country so-called CEDES to be created. CEDES stands for Zone for Economic Development and Employment. And it's only necessary that a landowner or a group of landowners decides we want to be a CEDE. And then they can create a new law, which has to be approved by a state commission. But they can make their own regulation within Honduras. They have own police and they have even an own court system. And the Honduran police is not even allowed to enter because everybody knew if this was the case, then they will destroy this from day one, right? They will just come with some fabricated claims and say, hey, you did some harm and we have to expropriate you. especially given at that time the police was in the hands of drug gangs, which is not the case any longer. But at that time, it was really a big issue. And so far, um, this was created, but it took 4 years until the first Sadie was really permitted. And in 2016, people heard about my ideas. That was even before my book was published, because I did some speeches on conferences. And so the group, which later formed together with me, the Sadie Prospera, a New Way Capital from the US, they asked me, "Hey, do you want to? You all have a legal background. Can you help us with creating the legal structure?" And that happened. And between 2017 and 2019, I was basically together with New Way Capital people and lawyers. We were creating what we call the Roatan Common Law Code. Roatan is an island that belongs to Honduras, very nice in the Caribbean. And there we created a system which was based on common law, which has some best practices laws from New Zealand, but we streamlined them regarding property. And so a whole new world in its own was created. It's not a fully free private city model, because, again, they wanted to create a Hong Kong, which is more top-down model. You have a kind of a governor, which is called technical secretary, must be a born Honduran. And he can come up with all kinds of regulatory ideas, and then the state commission has to approve that. And the people that approached me said, that's not actually what we want, right? We don't want a king. We want rather a more participative system and a more free system. What about your contractual ideas? I said, that's fine. Let's try to put a private governance system on top of that, right? I mean, it's not ideal, but that's actually what we did. We said, the technical secretary is embedded with a city council, where all landowners, residents, and New Way Capital can put people in, and they agree on a legal system, which is then approved by camp, and then we actually are done. There's no more need to come up with further regulation, or only very few areas. And to protect the people, everybody gets a citizen's contract. And now, interestingly, I don't know what's the background, maybe some libertarian advisors helping with the law. There is an article in the law saying you can make an agreement of coexistence with the residents and agree on what is the rules of coexistence. And I said, that's exactly what I can use for my model. And here's the thing, Majur, if you have a contract with Prospera and they guarantee you that these rights are not going to be changed, then it doesn't matter what the technical secretary or the council says, right? Because you're protected by this. Maybe it's a difference for the new entrants, for the new residents, but you are protected by this contract, and that's what we did, and that was approved. So we have a lot of elements of a free private city in the CEDES, and there are 3 CEDES now. Every CEDE is different. Prospera is the one that comes closest to a free private city's ideas, like a private governance model, that you have a for-profit operator that has skin in the game, that can be sued, and you are protected by a citizens or residents contract, and that is done there. So, but we have to be and whereas let me say, Morazan, the second city, is on the mainland. It's more a Honduran blue collar worker city. Very interesting model. It's a proprietary society based on the ideas of Spencer McCallum, who says basically it's all about property. If you own everything, you can also make the rules. And that is the philosophy of the Morazan city. They said, we are only renting out. We are not selling land. Whereas Prospera does everything, right? Selling, renting. You can own property. There you can't own property. So it's a different model. But the third model is just, we take the laws of Delaware. That's all, right? So you have already what I said. You have a learning curve already. You have 3 different models on the basis of the same autonomy law, the Sadie Law in Honduras. Now, that sounds good, but the reality is that a socialist candidate was elected for president now, and she was partly running on the ticket to undo the Sades, right, against Sades, because it's a bad thing. I mean, I talked to a lot of people and mayors in Honduras. It turns out that they are against Sede because there's a lot of propaganda against Sede, but they don't know about Sedes. They told
Mhm.
me, yeah, we admit we signed that anti-Sede paper too, but actually we don't know what it's all about. And I said, okay, I explain you what a Sede is all about, and it's actually a good thing. Now they made a poll. What about people in Honduras? Do you prefer creating more jobs or unwinding the Sedes? 75% creating more jobs, right?
Um,
It may be that we are a little bit too late. I think if Sadis had started 3, 4 years earlier, we could have easily proven thousands of jobs. Right now, we have some hundreds of jobs only. Right, and then
mhm.
now this is the situation. Many people are coming saying, "This is a good idea, but you need a host nation. What if the host nations changes their mind?" And my answer is, yeah, it's a justified question. So we have some all kinds of investor protection things therein, so that it's comes with a price, right? And we have a lot of support in the country and blah blah blah. And now we have exactly this situation, right? And we will all see
Mhm.
how this turns out. And maybe it turns out that they are really canceling the Sadie law against. In the Sadie law, it says even then the Sadies continue to exist, right? But you know, a government can make you all kinds of problems. They just don't let anything in and out, and so we will see. And then there will be a big arbitration. I heard about claims of more than $1 billion, right? And
Oh.
there are already 60 companies in the city Prospera registered. So this is a test case about how stable such an environment is. But on the other hand, it also depends on the country, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Honduras is a country that always was divided between the left and the right, and in a very aggressive way, right? And I told you before that this law was passed when the socialists were boycotting the election. They were not in parliament, and now they are looking for revenge, right? So, and this is a situation which can happen again. And
Mhm.
I don't have a perfect answer to that, other than we just have to try it again and hopefully go into have the situation that we can show for at least 5 to 10 years how this is working. Because what we have seen so far is that the Hondurans who have entered the cities were very happy because it's giving them a better life than outside, right? But the political propaganda is okay. That's neoliberal foreign Yankees coming, taking away our land, right? So that's always the usual stuff, and that's why politics is a part of the problem, not of the solution. And that's why we want to get come up with a different solution. That it's not necessary to steer up people with lies and manipulation any
Mhm.
longer. That is the philosophical idea why we're doing that at all. But instead of this manipulation and propaganda, we just have to deliver a better product for people
Mhm.
to come to our place. And if we don't, then we lose. And that's how the market works, right? But unfortunately, not how politics works.
I see. And like I'm very curious, like you have been meeting a lot of governments about
Yeah.
this. So uh what are some major red flags or concerns for this government when you propose this idea, and what are some aspect which really attracts this government to test it out?
Yeah. Yeah, you can clearly say that. So the government in principle know about the idea of a special economic zone. There are already 5,000, more than 5,000 in the world. Not all are active. But in the special economic zone, normally you have different regulation when it comes to taxes and export-import duties. Sometimes some labor regulation and permitting. And this is already known, right? So the governments know, okay, if I want to attract businesses, I have to offer better rules. So actually, every single special economic zone is a confession by the state that their rules are not the best, right? Original rules, right? They don't see it that way, but it's exactly that. So now that is where we come into play and say, okay, now let's talk about not businesses, but also business, but not only businesses, but also residents, high potential residents from your own country so that they remain in the country, and from other countries so they come to your country. And they will create jobs and create investments. But they need a better environment which must not be corrupt, but must be efficient, right? And it must be fair. No interest groups that change the law every year. That is, if you come in new to a country, you cannot cope with that entrenched interest groups, old families there for generations. You have no chance, right? So in order to have a chance, you have to create a new system. So there, normally it's not a. It's relatively easy to say, okay, we want new own commercial laws, low taxes or tax free, because we have a fee system in a free private city type of model. And some easements. That is normally not a problem. The problem is starting when we say we want to have own security and own courts, right? Because this is this is touchy for sovereignty, and it is in a way, but this is the only way, especially in a difficult country, to create convenience for investors. And that's what we did in Honduras. We were basically looking for pension judges from Australia, from common law countries, from Australia, from Arizona, from Singapore, right? So where we say, okay, these are well recognized jurisdictions. And of course, if you are a judge in Australia, you cannot be at the same time a judge in Honduras. So you have to be pensioned. Former judges. And we asked them, are you willing to do that? And a lot of were really willing to help, right? So we are collecting a group of judges, very former Supreme Court judges, even were amongst them, right? We had former Chief Justice of Western Australia. We had the former judge of the Supreme Court of Washington State. So top-notch people are willing to help, right? So, and that creates trust. And that is the thing. And some countries, very few, I would say, I mean, I have a list about potential projects, 50 or 60, right? And they're off. 3 countries are okay with that, right? One is Honduras. The other one is in West Africa, which I cannot disclose yet, but hopefully soon. And the third one was a country which is not recognized by many other countries, and therefore it was difficult to get to find investors. But this was in Europe, in Southeast Europe. But it is possible. It is possible because some countries, either people immediately understand the beauty of the concept, like in Honduras, they wanted that from their view, or they understand it and say, okay, this could make the difference to all the special economic zones around us, because I mean, there are already 5,000 special economic zones. If I now have special economic zone number 5,001, why should people come to me, right? So that's what my main argument is. That you have to offer something more than that. And some countries understand that. But it's not easy. Then you have to convince Parliament, right? And then there will come people and say Supreme Court and Constitution, and then that is. It's a tough job, but I think it's still easier than to go into your home country, found a new party, and then change politics, right? I mean, good luck with that. I tried it for 30 years, not working. So negotiating with a government like the one in West Africa now is taking 2.5 years, and we are very close to a final project, but we're not there yet. So, but this is the time that is normal, and that was the same as Honduras was even longer. So, it's not an easy shot, right, to say it like that. But I think it's the only thing we can do, and I like doing that because I feel now that what I'm doing is really making a difference. And even if I fail in this or that project, I will try it again. And eventually we will succeed, and then eventually we can try out new things. We can show people. And I think if we have 3 or 4 free private city or hybrid models, prosperity zones, we call it sometimes, and they are working, I think then it's easier for new projects to pop up all over the world, because
Hmm.
you can point your fingers at that country. They have already done it. And this was, for me, for example, in West Africa, was very, very helpful, that I could say, look, there's a country, Honduras, they have the Sadie Law, right? And here is the law. And they say, that's good. It makes it much easier for the government to sell it domestically when they say it's already existing, right?
Hmm.
So I hope that it will, will get easier over time, but it's, of course, we are still in the early days. And as I told you, it may be that Honduras is failing, right? Despite all the work and effort that has been put into that. But it may also come out as a compromise model, that they are somehow tolerated, and then we can count on that and build from there. Next project, probably in Africa. I know there's another African project coming up from another group. So there's something going on in the world.
Yeah.
And in Asia, you have also some ideas. Again, most of the projects that we read about, and in Peter's newsletter of the Free Private Cities Foundation, they are often described. Most projects suffer from the fact that they don't have real legal autonomy. So actually, government can do what they want. And if you are in a country where people have their experience is corruption, crony groups getting their special interest, and election fraud, right? I mean, good luck in such a country with a new society, new community. It will suffer from the very same problems. So that's why the Hondurans were right. You have to create a new system to start new, start fresh, and protect it against all these entrenched interests and special crony groups as good as you can. And that is why you need some kind of legal autonomy, at least a special economic zone, free trade zone. It's the least thing you need. I would say that's my business thesis.
It is like when you describe like these challenges, it feels like it's such a complex problem we have like taken up, and like one needs like patience because there's so many people to coordinate. Sometimes there's a lot of friction, so it's great that you still are like going through it and you're very optimistic on this part. So it's incredible. Uh, I'm curious, like how can architects and real estate people can contribute or maybe
Hmm.
accelerate this development?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Look, you remember that our idea is that everybody is there on a voluntary basis, right? You look at the contract, you say, okay, I like it, and then I sign. If you say I don't like it, you just stay where you are, you don't come. But this also means we have to start from scratch. That means city building from day one, right? And now we have the question: how do we do that? Do we top down planning, master plan like Chinese cities, right? We're building 3,000 houses and then hope that people will come. Or do we rather go into market urbanism, say, hey, let's everything develop and let's see what happens, free markets for everything? And that's where we need the advice of architects and architectural schools, and say, hey, how should we handle that, right? Because
Mhm.
I can tell you what our current outcome is to say we have a core where there is more planning and more requirements, because we have some streets and we have here a port and maybe then another road going there that has to be kept free, and a park in the middle, and you can only build up to 4 or 5 stories in order to make it attractive, right? So the core of the city should look attractive. But the more you go to the outskirts, the more we say, hey, let just people experiment with things.
Mhm.
And then we have other ideas, like you could say there's a maximum of 7 stores, but you're only giving 4. And if you want more, you can sell your 3 stories to your neighbor. You can then build another whatever, right? So like in New York, I think this
Mm.
you can sell maybe a right of quietness or of view. Yeah, you
Mhm.
can sell your right of to view, and then somebody else can buy a skyscraper in front of you. So all these things can be tried out, and our idea is that If you can realize our first project where we are, in Honduras we are just a minority shareholder, but in West Africa we would be the main or only shareholder or 80% shareholder, and then we would say, okay, this is our project, and let's really, I call it a freak zone in the outskirts. We say, people, you can do whatever you want when it comes to building,
Uh-huh.
but right, maybe that your neighbor has a bad taste, right? But you know that, right? If he's building a building looking like a pink elephant, it's taking away your view and it's ugly. You your choice to move in the freak zone, right? You could
Yeah.
move into the center, but I'm happy from new ideas and more ideas from you guys from the architectural side, who can how such a city's development can take place when you're starting from scratch. Because if we think that central planning does not work in the market, then it probably also does not work when we construct a city, right? And so the question is, how much, um, how much do we tell people? How much restrictions will we have? There will be some restrictions because we agreed with the government of not higher than that and shouldn't be in danger and whatever. And there's liability issues, but more or less you could say, okay, you keep the roads free, maximum 5 stories, and there's a distance between the buildings of this and that meters. That's all. That's all our rules. And I asked a German lawyer who specializes in building rights, write me a building law which is not more than 1 page, right? And he did, and it worked, right? And Munich worked like that for hundreds of years, and that's why and it's a beautiful city. So that is where we are at the moment. But Mayur, this is just where we stand now, right? We are also here at the very beginning, and we are curious to hear from your architectural knowledge or from people who are experts in urban planning, their ideas. And I assume that the different free private cities will have different approaches in this regard.
Yeah, I was thinking like there could be a lot of interesting research and implementation because I love the freedom and flexibility this ecosystem provides, and some restriction which ensures the safety and other important aspect. So one approach could be like in universities, like architecture universities. Generally, there are studio where we get a design brief and we do like there could
Hmm.
be a good research done like what is the futurist city look like where we give people the power to
Yeah,
co-create, and those ideas which were couldn't be implemented in this government state could be tested out and in this scale.
exactly. And the idea that I came up with after all this discussion is we're not following just one solution. We have a variety of approaches. So as I said, in the city center, it's a more master planning type of development, and the more you go to the outskirts, the more flexible it is, and it's open to different ideas. And
Mhm.
just this is also to try out things, right?
Yeah. I'm curious like what type of community are you attracting in these cities? Is it like young, senior, digital nomad, business people? Like who are you? Who are the first movers?
Yeah, I think from what I can say so far from Honduras experience and our project in Africa is that there, of course, the pioneers will be libertarians, crypto people, and then people from the country, right? They're just looking for a job, better life, and then this is the first wave. The second wave will probably be just normal families, people looking for jobs from the host nation and from surrounding countries, experts from other countries. So it's starting more with the
Yeah.
single ideological people, and then it's getting broader, and just people who think it's a good place to live and work are coming at later stages.
Got it. And if you had unlimited time and resources, what would you do right now?
I would start free private cities in the Mediterranean to revive ancient Greek Phoenician times, right? To say Italy, it's perfect place for that, and they're all connected by the Mediterranean Sea. No, I think we can extend that model to the whole world. So to create an Hanseatic League of free private cities, which are spread over all continents, and they have all sea access, so they can trade with each other, and we can say we are carefully selecting our residents. But if you are chosen because you are just a normal person with not a extremist or not a criminal, then other cities would say, hey, if you have taken him, we take him too, right? So there's no more need for scrutiny and big paperwork. So this is the idea, that this is not just a one project or two or three, but this is becoming a new type of human development where people are living in where the state is a service provider, nothing else. And within that, you can form all kinds of societies. And I'm sure there will be different types because people are different, right? And you can maybe even, that's what I described in my book, right? You can even, during your lifespan, you can say, hey, I'm starting in this more communitarian, collectivist societies when I'm young. And then I go to the real free private city, making a living and business and save for my retirement. And then when I'm retired, I go back to my people, right? To my ethnic group or religious group or whatever, where I feel at home, where I was born in or whatever. So, and this can happen within a lifetime, right?
Mhm.
Or you can say, hey, crazy things are tested out in those free private cities. I'm going to live there for 1 or 2 years and see how I like it. And so the good old days, they're still ahead of us.
Mhm. Yeah, like I'm comparing it with the community tribe. Like Balaji Srinivasan mentions that with this online community culture, like this online community will come together and then realize into like a network state or like physical entity. So like it's a whole new way, like with blockchain, like with decentralized autonomous organization, people will materialize this online communities. And I could foresee like free private cities could also be like a physical tangent to like this network state formed online, or like multiple network of this free
Yeah.
private cities giving value to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point. I think Balaji also says that the network state is just the first step online, right? But it eventually need a physical space, and this is also my message to the online communities. It's fine, but it's not enough, right? Because at the end, they can just come through your door, and you are arrested for disallowed content on your laptop or whatever, right? They forbid in your country that Bitcoin is exchanged against fiat or whatever. So we need a safe place, right? And I think what the point you made is absolutely correct. It's much easier today that these groups are finding each other on an international level. So we have a time at there from time to time there is a development in society where societies are rearranged, right? And we have now a time where even in Western countries, we are losing more and more freedoms, and for whatever cause. And obviously, the majority is okay with that. But there's a minority of people who is not okay with that. And since we cannot have the majority, we have to separate, right? And that's the point. And we have to, instead of saying I'm a ethnical German, I need other ethnical Germans. I said I first and foremost need people who think like I do, right? Who
Hmm.
share the same values, and we are meeting each other. And the network state idea is I think a great first step. And then we are the guys who doing the dirty end of the stick work on the ground, and hopefully can then offer territory to those tribes,
Yeah.
to these online tribes, and say, hey, have a look here at our, do you like that? Maybe that is something for you. If not, here's another model, here's another city. And and that is my hope, that it's much easier to organize ourselves than it was before, because of internet, because of the networks and the connections, and you can even basically come up say this will be our rules, right? And then you can subscribe here, and if we have a territory, you will be informed, and that is which will maybe accelerate this whole process.
Yeah, and because these cities provide the flexibility, one could see like I foresee this as a gradient where like more regulated to less regulated, and one can pick and choose like
Yeah.
areas and zone which they prefer. So I wanted to do a rapid fire round. So
Hmm.
you'll have like 10 seconds to answer the question, and you gotta keep it very brief.
Okay.
Okay, so first is which city is in your travel bucket list?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
Which city is in your travel bucket list?
Budapest, Riga, uh, Sochi, Buenos Aires, Montevideo.
I see. Who's your role model?
If any, Ludwig von Mises.
Which business or technical book made a big impact in your life?
Atlas Shrugged from Ayn Rand, Liberalism from Ludwig von Mises, and Free Private City is my own book.
I see. Your favorite movie?
Uh, the man who wanted to become king or so with Sean Connery.
uh, your hobbies?
I'm skiing, motorcycling. Um, no more time for additional hobbies at the time.
I
Reading
see.
a lot. I'm reading intensively.
Yeah. And are you like a mountain person or a beach person?
Both. I have both. I live in Monaco. I just look at the beach, and the next ski resort is just 1 hour away. So I like both equally. If I had to choose, I would probably prefer mountains.
I see. And I know like Peter mentioned yesterday, there's a conference coming up in October, so really excited and looking forward to it. Uh, is there anything which we didn't cover in this interview and you would like to share the message?
Yeah, I want to tell you people out there that we are really at the beginning of a new age, and we have analyzed enough, right? We know a lot of very bright people have analyzed the situation. We now have to act. We have to do something and visit our conference, because the conference is every year and we are looking at the projects, and people can tell about their projects, and you can ask critical questions and compare the projects. So it's in October in Prague. So I would invite you to come and become active part of this movement.
That's amazing. I had a great time, Titus, hosting you. That was quite insightful, and I'll follow up with some potential architectural or real estate ideas.
Yeah, thank you very much. You're very welcome to support us. And it was a pleasure to be here. And thank you for your interest. And I hope I see you in October in Prague on the conference.
For sure. Thank you. Have a nice day, Titus.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye bye.